Hello and welcome to Ketter Farms. We're here with another Tutorial Tuesday video, and we are going to be showing off the basics of Courseplay and how to set up multiple harvesters and a grain cart in a field fully automated. And so I've got some equipment set up here, and if you've been watching my Let's Play series on the Minnesota Millennial Farmer map, I've used this exact setup in that series, and so feel free to go over and check that out. But I've got a lot of comments, people messaging me on, hey, I can't seem to get the grain cart working, I'm having issues, or I can't do multiple vehicles on the field, etc. So I thought I would just jump in here and show you how to do it, because really this part's pretty straightforward. Courseplay is one of those things that you could, or I could do a whole series, 10 plus tutorials and probably not cover everything in Courseplay. But what I'm going to do first here, and usually what I do is I'm just going to open up the field a little bit, give myself some room to work with on the edge of the field here, and I usually like to get the combines going on their course and then set up the grain cart course while they're, taking off the headlands. And this is a really big field, and honestly, this map has a few little issues that I've run into with Courseplay. And rather than picking an easy map to set up Courseplay with, I thought I would use this map and talk about the issues that I run into and why I set up my courses the way that I do. And so you can see here I'm just taking off a little bit on either side of the driveway here to give me some room to move some equipment onto the field. And this is something that I almost always do with Courseplay, especially on this map, because if we look at the map, you can see this field 3 that we're in. Actually, let's go out to this map here. I think it'll be easier to see. Field 3 here, for the most part, is this big straight field, but we have this part that kind of bends in here a little bit. And the issue that we have is there's a creek that runs along the edge of the field here. And what happens if you're doing headlands is once you go all the way around the field a couple of times, you end up somewhere up here, and you're trying to get back down to this point in the field. And Courseplay draws a straight line from here to here, so you end up going across this creek and running into all kinds of stuff. So sometimes it does a good job of going around the edge of the field, and sometimes it just tries to do a straight line. And so you can even see it here better visually. Is if I wanted to go to the corner of our field up there, I'd have to go straight across all this creek and the grass, and this is kind of bad things happen with Courseplay. And that's also probably the other thing that you're just going to have to get used to, is sometimes Courseplay is going to mess up, and we'll cover the best way to get your vehicles back on track when it does mess up. Because a lot of times if you do it wrong, your vehicles try to start over from the beginning of the course, and that's just a lot of wasted time. So with that, that's probably enough rambling, probably enough clearing the entry part. And so I'm going to back up off the edge of the field here. I'm going to turn my header off, and we're going to push. I've got Courseplay set up to use the keyboard controls. The default is left control delete to bring this up. You can also do right mouse button. I've disabled that because I have a tendency to push my right mouse button regularly. So for harvesters, we're going to use the default field work mode, which is this gear and the hammer and wrench here. So you want to make sure that that's selected, and then you can go ahead and push course generation. And that's going to bring up the map with the Courseplay course generator settings. Now you can come through here and find your field if you want to click through a million times, or you can just click on the field on the map to select which field that you are generating a course for. And then I always pick headlands. And I like to go around the headlands a couple of times. There's a few reasons for this. On this big map, I like to go around 2 to 3 times. I'm going to set it to 3, because what that does is it chews up some of this part where we're so close behind this creek, and it gives us more room to turn around at the end of the fields without running into things. And so I almost always do 2 to 3 headland passes. The other thing that we have to change here is how many tools we have. So I have 2 harvesters, and so I want to be able to run both of those machines. You can go up to, I think it's 8 tools on the same field. The more things you have on the field, the odder Courseplay gets. I honestly never really go more than 2 on the same field. And the last thing that I've been introduced to recently is there's this field center option, and if you change this to lands, it's going to generate a course that will keep your combine auger out into the open part of the field as much as possible. And so I'm going to talk about this in just a second after I generate the course, because the visual makes it easier. And the last thing that's really important here is the working width. It'll set by default on most machines, but sometimes certain mods don't report their working widths correctly to Courseplay, or it's not able to determine the working width, and so you can set that manually here if you run into issues. I happen to be using a standard in-game header on these combines, so it works pretty good. So I'm going to hit this generate field course button, and depending on the speed of your computer, this might take a couple of seconds. I've got a really fast computer, and so this goes pretty quick. On my old computer, this could take 30-45 seconds to generate. And what you can see here now is it's generated this course, and we set these 3 headland passes, so you can see these first 3 green lines around the outside. That's our headlands getting taken off. And then once we take off the headlands, it comes up here and it does this kind of odd pattern where we're going to cut through the middle of the field, and then we're going to have 6 rows of land on either side of where we cut through the field here. And the combines are, after you do that cut through, they're always going to have their auger on the outside of a chunk of land, so that the grain cart's going to be able to unload them easily. And so this is really important to using a grain cart, is using this feature, because otherwise what happens is every other row your harvester is in the middle of a new section that it's cutting, and if the grain cart can't get to it, it's going to fill up, and the harvester is going to have to cut in and stop and wait until it gets unloaded, and it just slows things down. And so the goal of how I run Courseplay is to keep things going. I want my machines moving at all times, especially on these big fields. So with the course generated, you go ahead and just hit this back button, and you can see here that I've got the start point right here on the map already, but my mouse is in this free floating mode, and so to get rid of the free floating mode, you can just push the right mouse button again to go back to normal farm sim mode, where you can move your screen around. And so sometimes that can get a little bit confusing. And so what I always like to do is I like to drive over here where I'm looking at the course. And the fun part with the course is that because I have 2 machines selected, the course is really just one course for the same 2 machines, and you're going to set an offset for your vehicle as to whether it should be on the left or right side of that course. The more vehicles that you have, you can set more than just a left or a right. You might set, like, I'm the left. If I had 4 machines, I could set that I'm left 1 versus left 2, right 1, right 2. And so those are things that you do here on this course tab. And so here, my first vehicle, I always like to set as the left lane offset, so I'm 1 left, and that means I'm going to be on the left side of this line. The other settings that you usually want to pay attention to here are under the, this vehicle-specific settings tab. And I always like to turn on vehicle convoy, so you can have it deactivated or activated. If it's activated, you can set the distance, and what that means is if there's multiple vehicles here, the second one that's coming up behind will stop if it gets within 100 meters of the frontmost vehicle in the convoy. And this keeps your harvesters from crashing into each other. When one of them gets full but the other one still has room, it won't try to just run right past. It'll stop and wait until the harvester in front gets out of the way. The other really important settings here, this is more important for different types of vehicles than harvesters. Harvesters are really slow, so a field speed of 14, they'll rarely get to this speed because you're harvesting at 6 miles an hour typically. So you can adjust though for other types of vehicles if you're doing field work to change how fast they'll drive when they're turning, how fast they'll drive when they're backing up. And then field speed is used for everything else. It's your top speed for just driving around on the field. And so when we get to the grain cart, we'll look at that and make some changes. The other thing that you can do here is showing waypoints. So I'm going to click this middle ... to highlight it. And you can see now that all of my course is shown so that I can kind of see where I'm set up to drive. I like to leave the course part off. It does generate a little bit of lag, causes some frame rate issues. And so I like to just keep the start and end points on so that I can kind of see where things are going to be. There's a whole bunch of other settings. Like I said, I could spend several videos going over all the settings, but those are the really important ones that I tend to change on a regular basis. On the far left side here, you have some combine-specific controls. These are how you handle your headland reversing. I just keep the default straight, works for me. I don't want to stop while I'm unloading. I want to keep driving, so I leave this as deactivated. And then I have my driver priority. This is if I have a grain cart, which we will. You can flip between distance and fill level. I want my grain cart to come and get the combine that is the fullest versus if I did distance, he would go and get, I believe it's the closest combine. And so there's some different thoughts that go into that, but I always want to keep my combines going, so I do it by fill level. And now I want to go ahead and get started harvesting this field. And so on this play, stop, pause, record screen, I'm going to change my start course at to first waypoint. And this is my starting waypoint here, and I'm just going to say drive course. And it's sometimes going to pause or lag for a second depending on the speed of your computer while it determines the appropriate course to get started. But once he starts going, you can just close out of the Courseplay screen here, and he's going to keep going. Before I do close out of that though, you can see that to harvest this whole field, it's going to take 1 hour and 43 minutes. So that's kind of a handy little indicator of how much time you've got left. So I'm going to let him go. We're going to jump out and get the next combine started and talk about 2 other things that you can do in Courseplay here. So I'm going to drive down here onto the same spot of the field, and then we'll get the second machine started. So left control delete to bring this screen up, and I don't want to copy, I'm sorry, I don't want to create a whole new course for this harvester, and I forgot to save my course on this other one. So if I jump back over into this harvester and bring up the Courseplay window, I'm driving, I can save my current course so that I can refer to it. And if you click this globe, you can manage your courses. Courseplay courses are per map, and so I've already created several courses here that I can use on any save that I have for this map. And so these are saves that I've created in my Let's Play series for the Minnesota Millennial Farmer map, and so I don't want to accidentally overwrite any of those. So when I go to save this, I'm just going to give this a new name that says Tutorial Harvest. And usually I'll put a field name in here, so if you look at some of my other field or courses here, you'll see that it's F3 for field 3, and then I try to name what it is so I can identify that. There's a bunch of naming conventions you can come up with to keep these straight. But now that I've saved this, I can jump back into our second harvester, and I can do two things. I can go to the globe here, and I can find this tutorial harvest course, and I can load this course in. And now if I go to the play button, you can see I've got the course started here, and I've got all the same options that I had. It's the same course we had before. If I go and turn this on, you can see same course we had before. Now, let's say that I accidentally loaded the wrong course. You can hit this X here to clear your current course and go back to default, and then you could go in and pick the correct course. The other thing you can do, especially if you're like me and you don't necessarily save all of your courses, you generate them on the fly every time, is there's this copy course option here, and you can scroll through, and in this case I only have one vehicle, so I can either pick the current course that this vehicle has or go back to none. And so I can find other Courseplay vehicles that are currently on Courseplay courses, and I can copy that course to this vehicle so that I'm driving on the same course that he is. So this is super handy. And then because we have multiple tools, I need to come to the mode settings screen here and make sure that I've selected the right offset. And then I'm going to go to the vehicle settings here and make sure that I have vehicle convoy activated. And then I'm just going to say drive course. And he's going to pause for a minute, figure out where he needs to go, and then get going onto the same course. So now we're going to jump over to the grain cart and set up a unload course here for the grain cart. Now, in general, my advice for people using Courseplay would be to avoid articulated vehicles. Articulated vehicles tend to have issues with Courseplay, and honestly a lot of mods have issues with Courseplay if they're using custom vehicle configurations and types rather than the base game ones, but this particular setup seems to work pretty well. I've been using it in the Let's Play series, so maybe that's gotten improved over time here. So there's a couple of tricky things with the grain cart mode, and so you'll notice because I have a grain cart and auger wagon hooked up to my combine, I now have this, it's called mode 3. These are the different work modes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? There's 10 work modes. Mode 3 is the overloader mode, which means I'm going to go to a combine, I'm going to unload it, and I'm going to bring it back and unload into another vehicle or tipping point or what have you. Typically a truck or another auger wagon if you like to set up a buffer like I tend to do. And so to create an overload course is actually really easy. And this is part of why we cleared out some extra part of the headland here. Is I'm going to come back here a little ways and give myself some room because we're going to be bringing trucks in here. And so what I'm going to do is get back a little bit. You want to give yourself some runway to be able to drive through, and I'm going to hit start course recording. And general guidance with Courseplay is to drive forward until you get to this next point showing up before you turn or do anything too crazy, to give your vehicles that are trying to get onto this course some room to do so. And so one other odd thing is when you're trying to drive and you have the mouse floating around like this, it works great until you move it down here, and then your vehicle's just going to stop. And so if you have your mouse out like I like to do, move it off of the Courseplay window when you're trying to drive. And I'm going to just drive up here a little ways, and I'm going to hit this parking sign, this waypoint. And this is where my auger wagon is going to stop and try and unload into a truck or another auger wagon that's sitting next to me. And then I'm going to continue to pull up here and hit the stop button. Now, if I look at this course, it's pretty straightforward. And you can do more complicated things, but this is pretty much the standard pattern for any overloader course. Is you're going to you come in on your start point, and whatever side your unload is on, which is usually the left side, you're going to kind of gently curve towards that and then curve away, so that when you have a vehicle parked there, you don't run into it. And so I'll grab a truck just to demonstrate what I mean by that. And so if I put this truck over here, and this is, we'll talk about, this is not how I would normally do this, but I can see my tire tracks, so I kind of know where my waypoint is going to be. You know, if I had this truck sitting here, you can see my previous tire tracks that come in, where my auger wagon's just going to come in, unload in the truck, and then drive out. And so you can see one of my combines is already full. And so we're going to talk about the issues that sometimes happen with the overloader course. So I'm in overload mode. I'm going to come into my speed limits, and I'm going to up these significantly, because when I'm driving with the cart, I want to go as fast as I can across the field, because the grain cart's going to be going back and forth a lot. And so I always crank this up to maximum speed, and then I usually set my turn speed and reversing speed up pretty high, just because, if he does need to turn around, I want him to do it pretty quick. And so I just am going to come in here and hit drive. Nearest waypoint works. It doesn't really matter where you start the course, because he's going to just sit here and try to check for a combine. So now if we look at this, we have this searching for combine mode here. And I'm not doing anything right now because I forgot to set which combines I want to look for. And so I can do by field. I can set that I'm looking at field 3, or I can actually come in here and select these two combines, and he's going to try to only serve those combines. So if you have a bunch of vehicles on the field or multiple grain carts that you're setting up on the same course, you can pick which combines this grain cart's going to go and look for. And so I've selected both of these combines, and you can see that it says current combine. And he's trying to, right now, find a path to that combine. But this is the part where Courseplay gets a little finicky, and so I'm going to bring up the DevTools log here, and you can see no path found in the 20,000 milliseconds. That's 20 seconds it took. It tried to find a path. It failed, so it's going to relax the requirements a little bit and try again. And the struggle that Courseplay runs into, in my experience, is when you're opening up the field, there's no good way for this tractor to get to the combine because the combine is already on the edge of the field. And so what I always recommend, and this is where I used to run into problems, and most of the people that I talk to have run into problems, is that this looks like the grain cart mode just doesn't work, and so you give up right here. And so what I suggest is you come in, you stop Courseplay, and until you've got the first headlamp taken off, you're going to have to cart manually. And so we're going to drive out here. We're going to cart for these two combines real quick, and then after we've gotten around the field once, we're going to go and re-enable Courseplay. And just as a point real quick, when I was talking earlier about why I like to use land mode, this is an example of what I meant by the combine will cut in. So imagine that I'm cutting through the middle of a field, when a combine gets full, he cuts in to make room so that a grain cart can come up alongside him and unload. But he's going to have to sit here and wait until I've fully unloaded and get out of the way before he can start going again. And so this is, again, the goal is to unload on the go and keep the combines moving as much as possible. And so I just wanted to kind of show that off, since because of the mode that I selected for the rest of the field, we shouldn't ever see this combine cut in like this again. So we're coming right back up to the start point here, and I filled up the grain cart here about 3/4 of the way around the field. So these harvesters were just emptied. They should be able to keep going now on their second run, and what we're going to do is jump over into this truck real quick and move him out of the way. It looks like the harvesters are going to be fine, but for the next step, I generally don't like to have a truck on the field for getting the grain cart course kicked off the first time, and I will show you why. And so once these harvesters get out of the way, what I'm going to do now is bring up our Courseplay course. I'm going to set this at first waypoint, and I'm going to hit drive course. And he's full, and so what he should do is go to the start of this course here and then move up to that waypoint that we set, where he's going to unload. He should put his auger out and wait to unload there. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is this guy going so slow? I thought we set it to 24 miles an hour for speed limit. And the answer is we did, but we've got our cruise control set from driving alongside the combine. And so always remember to max out your cruise control so that he'll go faster than whatever you had that set at. So he should come up here to this parking point and stop and wait to get unloaded. And so I'm going to go ahead now that he's sitting there waiting and bring up our truck and show you guys why a lot of times when I'm doing Courseplay, I prefer to have a second auger wagon set up here for just this purpose. And so I'm going to pull up alongside here like so. He's going to detect that there's something to dump into and put his auger out. And what's going to happen here is once this front hopper is full, he's going to take off because he's going to detect that there's other vehicles that need to be unloaded and barely be empty at all from a trailer perspective. He won't have enough capacity to empty two fully loaded combines with just what he can put into the one hopper here. And so this is where I like to put a grain cart here at the unload point that has a bigger capacity so that he can unload himself into that, and then I can set up courses with either AutoDrive or Courseplay for the trucks to continue to come back to this point and fill up and leave. It just keeps things running a little bit more smoothly, but you can certainly just unload into a truck like this manually. So you can see he should have emptied out a little over half, which is okay, but then he takes off without waiting for me to pull the truck up and finish unloading him. And so this is a little annoying, especially if, I could have unloaded the rest of that and had a nearly full truck and taken that back up to the yard. But now I've got to wait until he comes back. The other problem you're seeing here is what I mentioned before, is he's trying to catch up with these two combines, and so he's going to take the, semi-direct path to get to them. You can see that the course that he's figured out is not making a lot of sense. In fact, we probably need to go jump over into this vehicle because he's going to try and now cut up there. He's going to hit the only tree in sight and get stuck. And so this is the other big thing with Courseplay, and part of this I think might be a little bit of how the map file is defined for this field. But Courseplay is just kind of weird like this. And so there's two things we can do to fix this. The biggest thing is I tend to like to wait until the headlands are off to set up my unload course, because if you set your unload course to be a little bit further into the field, the driver's going to have more room to try and angle towards the combines. And so I'm actually going to bring him back here and just set up a new course really quick, because the unload course is the quickest by far to recreate. And so if I just come back here a little ways, and I've got no course loaded right now, I'm going to bring him right here. I'm going to say start course recording. I'm going to drive straight ahead a little bit. I'm going to put a parking point down. And then I'm going to continue back on up into the field and hit stop. And then I'm just going to tell him to drive from the beginning. And he's just going to go and drive back through and go out and try and catch up with those combines now. And so just to demonstrate what I mean by setting up a second grain cart as a buffer, he's sitting here waiting at the waiting point because he had some grain inside of the cart. And so I'm going to pull up here with another auger wagon. And he's going to start dumping into this auger wagon. And then that auger wagon's always there. So it's going to act as a bit of a buffer so that when he brings a load of grain back, he can have a huge buffer in which to dump. And then I've always got grain sitting here waiting for me when I bring a truck back. So if I want to manually drive my truck back to the farm, which on the Minnesota Millennial Farmer map I have to because of the unique grain leg settings, I can't set up an automatic course to dump into my grain leg. I have to actually go and turn it on. I'm going to be driving the trucks manually, and so this gives me that ability to pull up here and handle that and not necessarily have to hit it right when the grain cart is back up here at the unload point. I can finish doing whatever job I'm doing and kind of come back and forth. And so this works a lot easier. And you can see I got a little bit of a stutter frame rate drop here. Anytime the grain cart gets to that end point and he's looking to figure out how to get to a combine, it takes a lot of CPU typically, especially on these bigger fields. And so there's usually about a 20-30 second lag spike right when he's trying to find the next combine. And so ideally at some point, I'm hoping that that'll get improved from a performance perspective. And every time you restart the course for Courseplay, you have to remember to adjust your cruise control. So here I have forgotten to set my cruise control up again. And so I'm going to come into here and set him up at 24, so he's going to get out to these combines a lot faster. And so I'm going to let that go. We'll jump back over to check on him in just a second. And so you can see he's doing, his best to not drive on the crops. He's going to follow the inside of the crops around until he gets to a vehicle, and then he's going to jump out and try and pull alongside it. And in this case, I believe he's actually found this back combine here is the one that got full first that needs to be unloaded. And so as soon as he starts unloading, you'll notice that the combine's going to start harvesting, and they're going to unload on the go, which is great because you're maximizing your work time. Then you're not stopping and just sitting there while you're unloading, and this allows you to get some cool visuals and stuff if you're like me and you're just trying to watch the harvest happen and enjoy the scenery. And here at this point, you can see that we're unloading on the go with the main harvester. The The front harvester here is offset a little bit because when we generated our course, I believe I left the default on for a 7% overlap on the headlands. That's there because a lot of headlands are really curvy, and so this is designed to help pick up that extra bits that might have gotten lost going around curves and stuff like that on the headlands. So you'll notice that as soon as we emptied the front combine, the grain cart is going to stop here on the field and wait until it's needed again. And there's actually some settings that you can set in one of these areas. Here we go. On the mode specific settings, we can actually set when he's going to try and catch up with a combine to start unloading it. And right now that's set at 50%. And so when one of the combines hits 50%, he's going to start looking for a course to go out and drive up and catch them. And this drive on at is saying if I get done unloading a combine and I'm at or above 90%, I'm going to drive back to start unloading. And so if I jump into this back harvester, he should get full first because we unloaded him first. And so we'll check back in as he gets closer to 50%. So our combine is just hit 50%. And if we look back down the row here, you can see that the grain cart has just started moving. And he's going to catch up here and start unloading the harvester, the combines here, and get them going. And so this is why you have it set as low as 50%. You can set that to whatever you want based on the size of your combine, size of your grain cart, and different things to figure out, what works best for you. And you can see here that my combine is slowing down and stopping here as I come around the corner so as not to run into the guy in front. And so he's going to wait until he gets a little bit more room to pick his speed back up. But yeah, so, setting it at 50% gives the grain cart time to get out to the combine before he's full, so that ideally, again, the goal is that the combines never have to stop working and the grain cart can just keep going. And so he's going to get in here and start unloading as soon as the pipe is out. And so with that, we're going to jump over into the grain cart real quick. And ideally, he should get full here pretty soon. By the time he's done unloading this combine, he'll be able to jump to the one in front, and between the two, he should get filled up and run back up to the unload point. And so here you can see we've just finished unloading that combine, and we were at or slightly above 90% there when we finished unloading him. And so the grain cart driver automatically tarps the cover and is going to drive back down to the field. Now you can see, because I have a slightly curvy edge here to this field, that I'm trying to follow the edge of the crops, and the articulated tractor doesn't like the small turns, and so it gets a little jerky there. But he's doing a pretty good job. I mean, he's not driving over too much of the crop. Courseplay workers don't actually destroy crop, even if crop destruction is turned on, so you never have to worry about that. Just kind of a little safety feature in case, their course is a little wonky. And so he's going to pull right back up to the same point he was at before and start unloading into our buffer cart here. And so again, I love using these buffer carts, and I'm not in the best position there with it, but it is working. Because in this case, if I had just the truck sitting there, I would fill up a little bit of the back of the truck, and then as soon as it was full, the grain cart would move on and go back to unloading combines. Instead here, he's going to be able to unload probably all of his into this other auger wagon. Now, Realistically, I should invert these two wagons and you put the bigger one as the buffer, so that if my trucks run behind, I can unload an entire field cart into it. But this is just how I happen to have them set up at this point. The other thing you want to be conscious of is making sure that your unload point isn't set up too close to areas of the field that still need to be worked. In this case, I think we're going to be fine. I don't think this guy is going to crash into us, but as I say that, I'm watching him try to crash into us. So he's going to stop here, and it looks like because he got stuck in traffic, the other mode isn't working here for this back combine. So now we've got a big traffic jam. We may have to get everybody going back on their appropriate courses. So with that, we've set up a Courseplay course for multiple harvesters. We've got a grain cart course working with the unload, and able to keep 2 harvesters going pretty much non-stop at this point, even on a large field like this one on the Minnesota Millennial Farmer map. And so with the oddity of all of our vehicles crashing into each other here, I think that's a great place to wrap up this episode. Hopefully you found this tutorial helpful. If there are other things that you would like to see tutorials on, or if there's questions that you have or something isn't working for you, please leave a comment below. And I try to answer every comment on all of my videos as I can. And so I appreciate you watching. That's all for today. Kedrick, out.